Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 180 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I wanted to create an inclusive space where people could ask questions and discuss those topics without any gatekeepers or other toxic fans. I have a longer version of that intro usually, but we have an extra long episode this week, so let's get right into it. A few years ago for Pride Month, I invited Jenny the Geek on to discuss some of the characters in the DC universe who are members of the LGBTQ community. It's finally time to discuss the other Big Two company, and who the representatives are in the Marvel universe. So Jenny returned, as I want to make sure I include an actual member of that community in the discussion. In case you've forgotten who she is, we'll start with her introducing herself before we dive into our talk.
Hi, I guess I'm Jenny. I go by Jenny the Geek online. And I am a bit of a comic book reader, and I'm going to be starting to cover comics on YouTube. And I host a nerdy podcast called Cartoon Contrast Broadcast, where we compare a bunch of other stuff. And a lot of that is comic book adaptation.
Which I actually was on one episode of when we discussed Man-Wolf.
Yep, that's right. The origin of Manwolf. Or Manwolves in that case.
True. Although they were all John Jameson.
That is true. But yeah, I was on your podcast a few years ago where we tackled the few DC LGBTQ plus characters.
Yeah, and I had such a good time with you on that one when it came time to go over to the other side of... Well, it used to be the other side of the city because Marvel and DC were both in New York, but now the other side of the country, now that DC is in LA. So now that we're doing the Marvel LGBTQ characters, or at least some of them, because there are quite a few now these days that fall under that umbrella, and to discuss each and every single one of them would take way longer than either of us has.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to invite you back for that, and I thank you very much for agreeing to come on. So, as I said, there's a lot of Marvel characters now who are openly or members of the LGBTQ community. But when I started reading comics, that was not the case. And in fact, I was there when the very first openly gay superhero for Marvel came out of the closet. And I asked you to also read Alpha Flight number 106 to read the coming out of Northstar. And what did you think overall of... Let's just talk about that specific issue at first. What did you think as you were reading it?
I was a bit taken aback. It definitely is a bit extreme, as was the style of the time.
Yes, it's very 90s comics. The art by Dan Panosian has a very Rob Liefeld feel to it.
Like, at first I thought it was Liefeld. It's just like, wait, that's not right. He didn't, like, when Shatterstar came out, but it has its own appeal. Like, I kind of wish it had a different art style, but I understand given Image was big at the time, or I guess was Image a thing? Well, Liefeld was at least big at the time.
Yeah, the Image creators, I'm not exactly sure on the timing of if Image Comics was out yet. I don't think it had quite come out yet. I don't think the first issue of Spawn or Savage Dragon or any of those had been released, but it was definitely in the era where those guys were at least in the planning stages if they hadn't already announced it.
Hmm. But I do think that the writing, for the most part, it's a bit rushed, but it was during, you want to sell the art, maybe more than just the story.
And also, at that time, stories were much more one and done and not as big
Hmm.
of like story arcs and collecting for the trade and or writing for the trade and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But for what they crammed into 22 pages, like I sound like I hate one and done issues. Like that's not true. I do really appreciate a good one and done. I am also writing comics, and I try to do as many one and dones as possible. So
Hmm.
yeah, like it's a breezy read, obviously, given the 20 or 22 pages. But I think the story for the time, and I think now still does hold up. Like what was his name? It was not Captain Canada. I know that.
No, it was Major Maple Leaf.
Yes, Major
So
Maple Leaf.
close enough to Captain Canada. And that is a character that was introduced in this issue,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty sure pretty much never showed up again. Was just kind of the instigator of this plot and Northstar finally coming out. Now, do you know any of the behind the scenes of Northstar and the creators and what they wanted to do?
I only read a bit of it when it came up on Wikipedia
Hmm.
when just general. But like I knew that they were having a bit of a hard time getting the North Star to come out, but then finally it was just they got the green light.
Yeah. So Northstar is a John Byrne creation, as is
Hmm.
most of the original Alpha Flight characters. And he had always intended for Northstar to be a gay man. But when Alpha Flight first started, that was not something that the higher ups at Marvel would allow to be spoken about openly yet. And so Peter David has a great column talking about this and the fact that they made Northstar sick at one point, and it was going to be that he was HIV positive.
Hmm.
But instead, because Marvel got cold feet, he instead was revealed to have had a background that apparently involved the Fae. So instead of coming out as gay, they made him a fairy.
Oh. Oh. Well, I have news for everyone. I'm Faye. Wait, what? You mean gay? No, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, no, no. I'm
Faye.
Faye. So, yeah, but a couple more years later, we did finally get this Alpha Flight issue where he came out. Now, I reread it for this, obviously, and I found it really interesting that it was all done in a fight scene.
Hmm.
It feels like more recent stories where somebody comes out or that sort of thing happens. It's done in a more real world setting where they're sitting
Hmm.
down and they're talking, and but the fact that it's all done in this 90s we must be fighting while we're talking sort of thing, I thought was a very of the times sort of thing.
Yeah, like I mean, I I think it does work, and I do know stories where, funnily enough, that can happen. There's a comedian that tells a story about his pal. Basically, they were like fake fighting, and then it turned into a real fight. It's like, no, I'm actually just as
Oops.
like, oh, but yeah, he kicked a homophobe's ass doing that. But yeah, that like it's kind of exciting, but like there is also an appreciation for the quieter like coming out scenes.
Hmm.
Um, like I imagine we'll get into later.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There's one particular that I really want to get your opinion on. But let's talk a little bit more about Northstar. Are you familiar with him at all as a character? Have you read any of his stuff before coming on?
Funnily enough, no. Unless he showed up in well, I don't think he's in New Avengers when they blow up the Alpha Flight. But no, I never got around to him. I think I've encountered Sasquatch in my reading,
Hmm.
but outside of him, I don't think I have much familiarity with any of the Alpha Flight. Well, also there's Uncanny X-Men, but I don't think he shows up in that either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he'll guest star every now and then, but he's definitely been more of an Alpha Flight character than an X-Men character. Although we do get his wedding issue in Astonishing X-Men number 51, which came out in June of
Oh.
2012. He married his longtime boyfriend, Kyle Janadu. I hope I pronounced that
Mm,
right. I've only seen it written down. I've never heard it said, so I have no way of knowing for sure.
I do remember hearing about that, but unfortunately I have not made it to that part of my X-Men reading because
Hmm.
there's just so much X-Men.
Yeah, yeah. And you're a little younger than me,
Hmm.
so you haven't had as much time to read everything that
Hmm.
is out there. So, why don't we move along to a character that you probably are more familiar with since you are reading X-Men and have read a lot of X-Men, it sounds like. How about Iceman?
Ah, yes, Iceman. I do have a fondness for him. I feel like Iceman has been kind of a and there's Iceman character instead of like one of the mainstay X-Men, even though he
Hmm.
started out on the team.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice finally seeing him get more of a push with well, all new X-Men and the Iceman solo series that they eventually came out with. I actually read the Cena Grace's Iceman series as it was coming out in trade, and
Hmm.
really enjoyed his story of starting to live his life as a gay man.
Yeah. Marvel is very good, I think, at making the personal lives of the characters just as important as who they're fighting this month.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, Iceman, with his coming out, that's become kind of an important part of the book that was ongoing at the time and other stories involving him. How up to date are you on like the fall of X and all of that sort of stuff?
Oh, Krakoa really disinterested me. So it's like, oh no, the X-Men are maybe like a kind of a cult or something. I don't know. This feels weird.
Yeah, I know some people have definitely had issues with the Krakoan era. My feeling on it was it's a great story, but it doesn't fit in the Marvel universe.
Mm. Yeah, from what I heard about it, I was not exactly sold on it, and the Moira McTaggart turning out to be a mutant, and like,
Hmm.
oh, she's actually been like retconning like the Marvel universe, and like we don't know what retcon it is. Just like that feels like that would break the rules of time travel in the Marvel universe. And uh it's becoming what is canon then type deal.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take, and we'll see kind of where things go now that Krakoa has fallen and all of that.
Hmm. Well, Gail Simone's X-Men at least seems interesting. A kind of back to basic team and I imagine story as well.
Hmm. So, did you read any of the Iceman, the Astonishing Iceman series?
Not Jonathan Hickman's, I imagine. Of the Fall of X stuff.
Yeah, yeah, where
No, I
he
did not.
okay. So last we saw him, he's basically in his kind of ice fortress of solitude with him and his boyfriend. But unless he's in a freezing environment, he's not able to stay coherent for too long.
Hmm.
It's an interesting status quo, but he's also got this kind of. It reminds me very much of the Flash and Iris West, where his boyfriend Romeo is kind of his lightning rod that lets him reform when he needs to. You
Oh,
know, he can kind of come back to him and put himself back together.
okay.
But this is the character I really wanted to get your opinion on his coming out story.
Hmm.
Because obviously, when the X-Men were first created back in the early 60s, early to mid 60s, Stan Lee did not create Bobby as a gay man.
Hmm.
And so this is, you know, what we would call a retcon.
Hmm.
Did you read the coming out issue for the younger time displaced version of Bobby?
I did, and incidentally, I was reading the first volume of All New X-Men when you asked me to come onto the podcast. So I skipped to issue 40 of that series,
Mm-hmm.
and I know there was some backlash to issue. Like, not, there was backlash from idiots who don't care about gay people, obviously.
Of
But
course. Yeah. Sadly.
yeah, but there was some constructive criticism, I'll say, where it's just like it kind of feels invasive, like kind of like Gene was pushing him out of the closet. But I read the issue. I think I see what Bendis was trying to do. I don't think it lands as well as it could because of basically he does set up in the first volume of All New X-Men that Bobby is really trying hard to not show that he's gay. Just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yes, I love women. You sure do. And that has been a consistent thing, especially with first class Bobby at the time, like with the X-Men First Class, where he's just, oh boy, girls. But then like the 40th issue like happens after they went to space and like save. So it's a bunch of like a falling action kind of issue. Just like let's settle down, like let's
Yeah.
talk it out.
Relax, let's touch some grass. Like
Hmm.
literally, they're all laying out on a hill in the grass just chatting, and then Gene is like, "Hey Bobby, come over here for a minute."
Just like why do you say that stuff about girls? It's like, oh, I'm just a guy who's totally straight. It's just like, well,
Except you're not.
yeah. But I do think that Gene basically outing Bobby is just a tiny bit blown out of proportion because of in All New X-Men Volume 1, well, the first 6 issues of All New X-Men, They
Mhm.
established that Jean did not have telepathic abilities when she was a teenager. And
Right.
then when she comes to the present, she starts getting her telepathy, and it just, like, she can't help but, like, read people's minds, and it's kind of just every thought that they have. So I think that is where Bendis was fitting in that setup.
Mhm.
So, yeah, in conclusion, I suppose it's not as bad as people make it out to be, but I do think that they improve upon the coming out later.
Okay. Because I definitely could see both sides of it as I was reading it again recently, where I was like,
Hmm.
her reading his mind and basically telling him you're gay felt a little like pushing someone or outing someone who isn't necessarily ready for that yet.
Hmm. I think, like, it was supposed to be more super powered version of, like, you see, like, a friend of yours, like,
Mm-hmm.
doing something gay and, like, kissing a guy if they are a guy or something. It's like, I'm gonna just help you out a little bit because of I'm aware and, like, you seem to be in self-denial. Because
Right.
of she doesn't go like, "Hey everybody, Bobby's gay."
That's true. It's not it's a personal it's a one-on-one conversation. It's not like when somebody will post on Twitter, "Oh, this person is gay." It's not that sort of thing where it's public. So, yeah, that definitely alleviates some of the concerns that one could have about this the way it was done.
Like, I guess if we were going to use, like, a movie example, it would probably be like the equivalent of Happy Death Day. I'm not sure if you've seen that one.
I saw the first one, not the second.
For the audience, if you haven't seen it, there's a guy who, like, the main character is in a Groundhog Day loop. And there's a guy who's just like, "Hey, you want to go out? I'm totally, like, the straightest dude here." And then, like, she's, like, groundhogging, hog daying, and that eventually, she stumbles upon his dorm and is just like, "Oh, okay." And then, like, one of the loops, like, he tries to walk up to her again, like every Groundhog Day he does, and she just goes, "You're gay." Just
Just stop hitting on me. I get it. This is not for you.
mhm. But when they eventually in Uncanny X-Men 600 talk to adult Bobby, I think it is handled quite well with that because it is basically a Bobby who has, like, his whole future in front of him, and an older Bobby who is kind of worn down a little more
Hmm.
and doesn't want to, like, is more scared. And it does kind of illustrate why young Bobby had to come out
Yeah.
for older Bobby to have a happier present.
Yeah. Although it's kind of funny, a lot of the conversation that they have is like, in the time you originally existed in, young Bobby, it wasn't as easy to for someone to come out then, and it wasn't as accepted as it is now, and so I just buried that, and after a while it just got so used to being buried that I didn't even want to deal with it anymore. But with Marvel's sliding time scale, it's no longer 1960 whatever that would be when young Bobby was was around. It's now probably 2001 or something like
Hmm.
that. And it's like, okay, yes, it's not as easy then as it was now, but it's not the same level.
Yeah.
it was a
Like,
lot easier to come out in 2001 than it was in 1965.
yeah, I
um,
think
so eventually
maybe
there's
they
going to
were.
be like a time period where it's like, really? Was it that hard to, when you read this story and it's like, yeah, young Bobby grew up in 2010 and
Yeah, gay marriage was legalized, but oh, Bobby, it was so hard. It was
yeah,
so
exactly.
like, and that's not to diminish anyone still in the
Oh, no,
closet,
no,
but like,
yeah,
but like
I
from where Bobby existed, like actually, just yes, the '60s. It was such an inclusive time for everyone.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Bendis may have been aiming for the '90s, which were a little more inclusive, but it was still rough because the AIDS and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, definitely. I'm a white cishet male, so yeah, I don't have any true firsthand experience, but
Hmm.
at the same time, in high school, I was friends with the gay clique. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I had fags go home written on my locker and on my car.
Ooh.
So I know in the early 90s, which is when I was going to high school, that it was still not nearly as accepted as it is today. But at
And
the
they
same time, I there was a gay clique and they were openly gay. So it's
mhm.
not like it was in the 60s either, where that sort of thing would have been unheard of.
You could die
Yeah.
if you come out of the '60s.
Well, and unfortunately you can still die today, but it's
Yeah.
it's not nearly as universal in
Mhm.
society.
Yeah, like they do get into some of that in Cena Grace's Iceman, who is a gay man. So
Hmm.
Marvel brought him in to like write Bobby a little more authentically
Yes.
because Bendis is a straight guy, so he doesn't have that experience.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
always
in
good
the
to get voices of those who actually know the experience firsthand. That's why I invite you on because I don't want to straight explain to everyone. Here, let me tell you all about what it's like being gay in the comics. It's like, no, that's not my job.
Yeah. But in Cena Grace's X-Men, like in the first issue, he does have to actually have a conversation with one of his exes that he's been avoiding, which is Kitty.
Mm.
Uh, just like, oh, that's gonna be awkward. And he and they do actually tackle Bobby coming out to his parents in that. And if you remember in X2, there's that line where it's, have you ever tried not being a mutant?
Yeah, Bryan
And
Singer definitely made that allegory prevalent in
mhm.
the X-Men movies.
Yeah, and it's not too dissimilar to what happens in the comics. Where it's just like his mom is much more open to it, but his dad is a little more just like, I didn't raise my son to be like this, but it's he comes around eventually if I remember right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Cena Grace's Iceman only lasted, I think, 18 issues, maybe. It lasted until like volume 3 in the trade paperbacks.
Yeah, which these days for a new title, that's pretty good.
Oh yeah, like especially of a character that like Iceman, who is unfortunately like a sea level like X-Men now.
Yeah, although he doesn't belong in my lesser known X-Men series at least. He's not that bad. He's not that
Oh yeah.
that down the list.
Hmm. But
uh
Yeah, but I believe there are some more Marvel characters we want to spotlight, I suppose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You had a few that you specifically asked to bring in. So why don't you start us off on one of those and tell me what it was about them that you wanted to discuss?
Well, actually, I suppose I will start with Black Cat
Okay.
because I not have a lot of internet access until after high school.
Okay.
Just it's just sparing like because
I didn't have the
it's a
internet
long
until
story.
after high school, but uh, it pretty much didn't exist at that point. But yeah, no, I understand.
hmm But long story, it was living in the middle of nowhere with not unlimited phone data, so
Hmm.
you had to use the internet when you could. But I had the Spider-Man 2002 DVDs. And I was looking on the back, and I was like, "There's a DVD-ROM," and I put the DVD-ROM in, and found that there were comics. And one of those comics was Kevin Smith's miniseries of Spider-Man and Black Cat,
Right.
where I think it was the first time that Black Cat actually mentions that she is bi, at least in canon.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I would not find that hard to believe because, yeah, I read those early issues with her gestating Spider Man, and there was no sign of that whatsoever at that point
hmm
in the early to mid 80s. I wasn't reading those as they were coming out, but when I did start reading comics, I went back and thanks to Marvel Tales and other trades like that, I was able to read all of those back issues.
hmm But yeah, that kind of came as a surprise to me, and I wasn't at full realization of who I was, so it was just like, oh, that's neat. Let's just store this in the back of my brain for later. And it turned out later on when I researched Black Cat more with my unlimited internet access, I found out that in the Spider Girl reality, she actually has a female fiance, and she's quite happy there too. I was like, good for them. I'll eventually get to that when read through Spider Girl. I'm still on the first volume. But yeah, that was kind of impressive to me, and it's kind of gotten to a point now, at least my interpretation of Black Cat, where like obviously she's evolved as a character and she's not the same like oh, I want to be with Spider-Man, not Peter Parker, and
Hmm.
oh, I'm obsessed with you, etc. Or it's kind of become just she's her own character, and it's really weird when they have her actually be like, "Hey, Peter, let's be a thing again." It's just like, honey, you don't need him. You just recently had like a 2019 like ongoing series that was very successful from what I hear. So it's just like, and Spider-Man is to put it lightly, not the best right now. It's just
He's really
just
not in the best place at the moment.
no, just like go somewhere else.
Go live your
Just get
life.
yes. And it's
Although she
just
is right now, she is dating a woman. She's been starring in a series of miniseries.
Mhm,
And the latest issues I've read are her teaming up with Mary Jane,
mhm.
who currently has access to superpowers through technology that her current boyfriend slash husband slash it's confusing and
Yeah,
let's not go into Spider-Man's whole backstory right now.
yeah.
But yeah, the two of them are teaming up, in order to keep Felicia's girlfriend safe, basically.
Cool.
And so it's nice to acknowledge that in the main continuity and see her actually not just date men and say she's bi, but actually have some experience with that as well.
Hmm. And they actually have been promoting her as a LGBTQ character in the
Hmm.
Marvel Voices series. Actually, one of my favorite Black Cat images is just her on one of the covers of Marvel Voices. It's in like a club, and she's just on her knees, just like it kind of seems like she's just like, oh yeah, I like. Just like very excited to be on that cover. Yeah, I do hope that Marvel continues to use Black Cat more as her own character instead of being defined by Peter.
Right.
Um, which unfortunately in the 2010s that was quite the case when they were just like, and now she's the Queen Pin, and she's evil, I guess.
Yeah, although I felt that it didn't tie too much into the actual Spider-Man titles.
Hmm.
So it was nice to have her own storylines with her taking control of the crime scene as much as she could.
Yeah.
But I like her much more in her current, in that anti-hero Catwoman mode, where she's mostly out for herself, but she'll do the right thing when it boils down to it.
Yeah, kind of has become a bit of an adventurer type series, I suppose.
Hmm.
And I suppose we'd be very foolish not to mention one of Marvel cash cows, uh, Deadpool.
Yes.
Hmm.
So Deadpool obviously got the next movie coming out next month.
Hmm.
Now he's listed as being pansexual,
Hmm.
but I can't remember reading any issues where he dates non-women.
Hmm. Currently he's dating a well, maybe not currently, but the last time being last year I saw Deadpool in the news.
Okay.
Um, he's dating a non-binary character. Now, I suppose what we should get into it. Deadpool has had a history of writers poorly stating his sexuality. Um, I don't remember who it was, but I guess I don't want to throw them under the bus in case they've changed their views.
Hmm.
But they were just like, well, you see, Deadpool's no kind of crazy. He'll go with anyone. Is like, mm, but
Yeah,
that
that's being pan does not make you crazy is the
yeah.
problem there.
Yeah, poorly stated, but he definitely has shown off more that he's more of, I guess, of a Bugs Bunny type of character in that we're not afraid of showing him as, he'll be in drag or whatever. Like in Dead
Hmm.
Presidents, he dresses up as Marilyn Monroe to kill dead JFK. Uh, like he's definitely, and they're not explicitly just like, whoa, we don't want to mention that Deadpool, like Bugs Bunny is gay or anything like that. Like Marvel's a little more upfront with, no, Deadpool is actually, pansexual. Like we can actually put him on the Marvel Voices
Right.
cover, and they're not being a problem. And there is, I suppose, a criticism of just like, well, his sexuality has been kind of treated as a joke in the past, but I feel like Deadpool as a character, it's a little more complicated. because of Deadpool has an innate fear of human connection, and he often uses humor, but also pushes people away
Mm-hmm.
to avoid that human connection, like John Constantine. But
Okay, yeah, I can see that comparison there. That makes a lot of sense. And he does freely admit when he's attracted to someone, male or female or whatever.
I mean,
Um, but
they were
it's
based. Oh, what were you saying? Sorry.
just that it's never gone anywhere.
Hmm.
He's had very few actual relationships, and the few that he has that to me have been significant have all been with women.
Yeah, that is definitely the case of what I have read. Now, I do believe there is potential there that they haven't quite captured yet
Mm-hmm.
fully, but also I feel like Deadpool himself needs to have a little more growth as a character before they actually have the ability to have a partner, a long-standing partner instead of just, oh, I show up for an issue and that's it.
Yeah, well, he did have a long-standing relationship. He got married. Uh,
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, she was a monster, literally,
Hmm.
but it's definitely happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you raise an interesting question for me. The way you said that he should have some growth before he's able to have that sort of real, actual long-term relationship with someone. Um,
Hmm.
a healthy long-term relationship with someone, let's
Yes.
say. But would that growth take away what people love about the character?
I don't think so, because I do believe that Wade's story is a story of a good person that is convinced that he is a bad person.
Okay, I like
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
And we have had that growth before, like in Gary Duggan's Deadpool, and like he's been an Avenger, like he's made it to that team
Hmm.
even though he's killed who knows how many people. Oh,
Well, so as Wolverine. So
yeah. Uh, a little spoilers for Gary Duggan's Deadpool. He does regress as a character, but it's not unnatural. It's kind of like Tony Stark. He has built-in natural character regression because he can't help making the same mistakes because of he's afraid to be happy. But I do think if we get to a bit of a status quo where he can be a bit happier, and maybe this partner can actually help him find that happiness, we could see a Deadpool like in a more long-term queer relationship.
Yeah.
Also, I guess we shouldn't go over this, but it has made it into the Deadpool movies, specifically in Deadpool 2, where we see that Wade actually has a crush on Colossus. Because I don't think they'll ever follow up on it because of Wade is just a kind of a trade as a character. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Deadpool
Well,
fan, but
and again, it at least from my point of view that it felt like it was being played as more of a joke than anything real.
mhm. That is true. Like, and I'm sure that we probably won't get something like that in Deadpool 3 because if they are still focusing on is it Vanessa in the
Yes.
movies? Yes, Vanessa. I didn't want to confuse it with Fisk's wife.
Who is also Vanessa.
Yes. But yeah, they are focusing on Vanessa and Wade's relationship, the entire backbone of the first movie and the second movie with her death.
Hmm.
And it seems like the third movie is going to be just Wade and Vanessa not being together and Wade trying to deal with that.
Well, I have no idea what this movie is going to be. The
Like, it
trailers
actually
have
did.
given very little information about what the actual plot is, but I know Vanessa is back
Hmm.
in the movie because they show him in the apartment right before he gets recruited by the TVA, and Vanessa's there. But then the majority of the movie, I believe, is going to be him and Wolverine. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see, and you know hopefully he and Wolverine can have some on screen time together in a romantic sense because
Hmm.
it's obvious that Ryan has wanted to go there.
Hmm. Like, I feel like maybe we could see that in a future version of Deadpool. Maybe it won't be the live action version, but like if we ever get a larger animated depiction of Deadpool, like
Hmm.
maybe they can get there, but they've kind of put themselves in a box with the Deadpool movies, not going too much into Wade's pansexuality because of,
Right.
well, the first one is a revenge. Well, both this two, one and two are kind of revenge movies in a way.
Yeah, with Vanessa being the primary love interest.
Hmm. Yeah. Were there any more queer characters that we wanted to get into?
Well, you mentioned Loki as someone you wanted to touch on.
Wow.
Originally, I specifically was leaving them out of the discussion because Marvel puts all of their gods in the agender category, basically, where it's
Ah.
like they are above gender, basically. But Loki definitely has those moments in the comics. There's a line where Thor refers to Loki as my brother who was once my sister, because Loki has had both male and female incarnations.
Hmm. Yeah, I do appreciate that everyone is respectful of whatever Loki is going by in that particular issue.
Hmm.
Um, well, in any issue that they appear in. I do really appreciate it. And A Force, the first arc of that, where it's Secret Wars, and if you're not familiar with Secret Wars, multiverse blew up, Doom took over, and there's sections of Patchwork Planet.
You'll see it on screen in about 3 years.
Yep, definitely. But the A Force is a mostly, well, actually, all female Avengers team who protects this small, like, section from, like, the outer threats and stuff. But,
Mostly the Marvel zombies, if I remember correctly.
mhm. But in the book, Loki is actually part of the A Force. And, well, Loki's gonna be Loki, but they're still respectful, and it's not just like, oh, she's not a real one of us. It's like, no, 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 no. She's just very deceitful. Because it's just part of her nature.
That's who she is.
Hmm.
I had a great time talking Loki with Anne
Hmm.
when we did the deep dive on the 2 seasons of the show.
Yeah, and they do touch on Loki being at least bisexual in the show.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's only one line, but I feel like Sylvie as a character, while they don't explicitly say it, like I do feel like it was quite a metaphor for like trans people, with Sylvie, where it's just like, oh, well, this is since you've decided to be this while society or the TVA has dictated that you are male throughout the multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we have decided to prune you.
Yeah.
hmm
The fact that she never actually made any decision, it seems like, to veer from the sacred timeline. She never did anything that said, here's what I am doing to change my destiny. The only
Yeah.
thing that was different was that she was a she.
hmm
And the TVAs came along and said, nope, not allowed.
Yep. And they also love to I essentially dead name her because if she does go by Sylvie instead of
Mm-hmm.
Loki. But I felt that was kind of a neat way, if it was intentional, to cover that part of Loki.
Now, there's another character who is even more now identified as transgender, who is another long standing X-Men character, and that's Mystique.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Was
Um,
a very recent retcon.
yes, which was what Chris Claremont had intended from the beginning. But
hmm
again, Marvel higher ups were reticent to make that sort of thing canon and
Yeah,
state it
like
outright. But yes,
yeah,
Mystique is now Nightcrawler's father.
and also she is bisexual as well, very clear.
Yes, yeah, she
hmm
that has been part of her character for a while because she's had relationships with uh, everyone from Iceman to her long-standing relationship with Destiny.
hmm I do quite enjoy that she's finally able to be trans because, well, genderqueer, I suppose, to be more specific.
Okay,
Um,
gender
he,
is gender
yeah, gender
fluid.
fluid.
Okay.
Because of Chris Claremont definitely always had that in the back of his mind because of like there was an Uncanny X-Men where he snuck in Destiny as like a love interest for Mystique because of he's just like he used like the French word for lover or something and just like
Mm-hmm.
Marvel's just like I don't understand French. Print it.
Good thing no French Canadians were on staff at the time.
Yeah, like but like she's kind of one of those characters where it's just like, oh, but she's evil though. But it's just like she's flip-flops, you know. So it's not too like, oh, we're making the most sadistic person in our universe. Queer. You're
Yeah,
welcome, gays.
well, and that's why I like focusing on those who are on the more heroic side. And Mystique, especially in more recent times and in the first class era of movies, is more in that anti-hero sort of mold where
Like,
she's not out and out villainous.
yeah, like her sexuality, it's kind of been
She's morality fluid.
like it's kind of one of those things where when you really think about it, it's just like, really? We have not we just got to this? Like I thought we were all agreed upon this long ago, but apparently not.
No, well, it went through a few retcons. It was originally that Mystique was Nightcrawler's mother, and the father was. Well, at first it looked like the father was Graydon Creed,
hmm
making Sabretooth now kind of a step brother to to Nightcrawler at that point. But then they retconned it to Azazel being his father, and now they
Hmm.
finally retconned it to what Nightcrawler's creator had always intended,
Yeah, like,
for Mystique and Destiny to be Nightcrawler's parents.
yeah, like, it's honestly a retcon that, well, it works because it was the original, like, it's from, like, the most important X-Men writer to exist, so,
Yeah, yeah.
so it's bound to work, but, like, it really works for Nightcrawler's character as well because of Azazel is like a demon who's like had contact with Mephisto, and this kind of misses the point of Nightcrawler's whole dynamic and character.
I think there was potential there to do things with, the fact that Nightcrawler is a devout Catholic but has a demon as a father, but you can do all those sorts of stories with like Damon Hellstrom, son of
Mhm.
Satan. It wasn't new when they introduced that to his backstory. There
Like,
was potential there, but unfortunately, and I hate to say it because I've met him and he's a really great guy and a really nice guy, but Chuck Austin on X-Men did not work at all. And
yeah, I've
and he's the
I've
one
heard
who
things.
introduced Azazel as the father, and it did not work for the character.
Hmm. To get back to Mystique, I guess, like I do think it's quite important to finally have that out, especially like since like X-Men have always been a metaphor for the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
But later on it's kind of been more specific on like the oppressed of the queer. And because like there's the 90s with like the techno organic virus or something that was
Uh, it
like
was actually the
infiltrating.
legacy virus
Ah,
was
yes.
the one that was more of an AIDS allegory.
Yep. Like it's always been there, and I'm glad that we're finally kind of embracing like saying the quiet part out loud, I suppose.
Yes,
Like
we're
I mean,
we're being more open and transparent.
mhm. And we have got a bit I'm not sure if it's concrete, but we've kind of gotten some hints that maybe Scott, Jean, and Logan, at least in the Krakoa era, are kind of in an open relationship together.
It was never absolutely stated outright, but the fact that Gene Scott and Logan all had a bedroom that connected to each other's.
Hmm.
One of the things that I really liked about the Krakoa era were those single pages that were either technical diagrams or were like printouts of emails, or it was a pure exposition page every now and then would just be in there and fit with the story, but was a new way of telling the story, basically.
Hmm.
And yeah, in one of those, they showed the layout of the Summers house, basically. And yeah, Jean's bedroom connected to Scott's bedroom and Logan's bedroom. And it was like, okay, well, I guess either of them can come in whenever they want.
Yeah, like I've seen like a panel of just Logan kind of just making talk with one of the X-Men, and like he's in like on a satellite or something, just watching, like keeping watch. Just like, so, what do you think of this? Just like, I don't know, like I think Scott's ass looks kind of nice. It's like can't argue with that, bub. It's like you wanna tell us something, Logan?
Well, I think if you've been around as long as Logan has, you're either going to be super conservative and be like, everything was better when I was 10 years old or 20 years old or whatever, or you're just going to be like, why are we worrying about any of this? This is all, none of that matters. And so they're going to be either completely conservative or completely open and liberal.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, especially living in the world of the X-Men, for Wolverine to go on that side of things rather than the ultra conservative side.
Yeah. Were there any other characters?
Like I said at the beginning, there are so many characters now that we could discuss. It's impossible to list them all.
And then there's characters like the gods and I think the symbiotes as well, where it's just
Hmm.
like, oh, kind of above all this, so
Yeah,
count, I guess.
they're agender, which they have no specific gender because they're aliens or gods or whatever.
Yeah.
But how have you been enjoying the Pride issues that Marvel has been coming out with?
Now, I will admit, I haven't read any of them. They're on my read list.
Okay,
But
I thought you had mentioned. I guess you mentioned the cover where Black Cat
yeah,
is on it.
yeah.
Okay.
I think they're doing a decent job from what I have seen. They did get into kind of a bit of a controversy earlier this year because they were announcing, oh, we're gonna have like Pride covers for every Marvel thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they were like it was specifically for this year for Pride. We really want to focus on the allies of
Oh,
queer
yeah.
people as like, ooh,
No, 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 no. That's not where you focus Pride.
yeah, like that was quite a misfire.
I mean, I could see them doing like, here's a character in the LGBTQ, and here's their friend who is an ally. Like
Hmm.
if they did like a pairing sort of thing.
Yeah, like
But if it's
it's.
just focusing on, hey, this character is an ally,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a little misguided, I would say.
Yeah, like the covers that I've seen, like it seems to be like what you said. There is also a problem because it's like the characters that they choose aren't exactly related to each other. Like you'd imagine it would be like, oh, Spider-Man and Black Cat, but it's like
Right, yeah.
Spider-Man and I guess Northstar maybe. It's like remember them having any interaction. It's
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, it's the Marvel universe. Everybody has met everybody else at some point, but still not a major connection between those two.
I guess my thing on Marvel Pride is I do wish that they were a little more open to like just making like characters like queer or creating characters who are queer, which I have been creating characters who are queer, but actually market those characters so that
Yeah.
they can kind of build up an audience instead of going, and here's a character, and we'll never speak about them again until next June. Don't worry.
Last year's Pride issue, they had a character named Escapade, who was the first transgender character that is not like Loki, where it's a magical transformation. This is a
Mhm.
human being who has gone through either HRT or some sort of,
Yeah.
but she appeared in that issue, and I
Hmm.
think she maybe showed up in one arc of New Mutants, and that's it. And it's like, you made a
Hmm.
really big deal about her when the Pride issue came out, and then you ignored her. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, like I do feel like DC, if we're going to compare
sure.
the distinguished competition,
Hmm.
uh, I do feel like they're a little more open to it. I do think that might have to do with how both of their universes are built a bit. Because if, like, in DC, anything goes, really. Because it's like, oh, well, we could just reboot, it's fine. Or it's an alternate universe, whatever. But, like, Marvel, like, if you say it in 616,
It's
you
canon, and
can't
it's canon
unsay
forever.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I think when you have like, oh, we can just let's make Iceman gay. It's just like kind of a thing where it's just like, well, we can't really take this back because if we do take this back, it's gonna look really bad.
Ooh, yeah.
So, like, I feel like that might be like a fear of theirs, maybe, I guess, as like how they've built it.
Yeah.
Like,
And I also wonder whether or not the parent companies involved have any part of the decision making process there. Because Warner
yeah.
Brothers, at least until recently, at least, Warner Brothers had a very hands off approach to DC. And it was just like,
Mhm.
you guys are a content farm, and if you make a little bit of money printing comics for it, great. But just go ahead and do whatever you're going to do, and that's fine. And Marvel for a long time was just its own company, and then got bought up by first Ron Perelman of Revlon, and then now owned by Disney, and Disney tends to have a tighter rein on their daughter companies, shall we say. And Disney has been, for a huge corporation, good about being accepting and open about having characters as part of the LGBTQ community. But
Mhm.
at the same time, they've also been they'll say like, "Oh, look, LeFou in the Beauty and the Beast live action is gay." See, but at the same time, it's like, yes, you see him kiss a guy in the background of one scene really quickly. It's like they're kind of wanting to dip their toe in without fully committing necessarily.
Yeah, like have like they want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Like because of like at least for Disney movies, like they will have that kind of scene, but it's easily edited out
Mm-hmm.
if they want to
Release it in China.
like yeah, release it in China. And I guess I will mention like that's why I really have a respect for Multiverse of Madness because of
America
America
Chavez.
Chavez, yeah, is specifically a queer character, and she has two moms. And the way they filmed it, where I believe this was kind of Sam Raimi's part of this, where it's just like, oh no, you can't edit this out because this is kind of a crucial
This is an
part of the
important plot
story.
point.
Uh-huh. So it's just like, yep, and like it did not air in like or I guess release, jeez.
Hmm.
I sound old. Like it did not release in countries like Saudi Arabia because of like specifically of
Yep.
that. But yeah, like Disney is kind of maybe I wouldn't go so far as saying two-faced because I don't think it's explicitly malicious. It's just kind of, are we cool with this yet? I don't know.
Being as generous as I can, I would say they are overly cautious.
Yes, overly cautious is perfect. Obviously, just like look at Google Disney's first gay character and just go down the articles. Because it's just like, okay, uh-huh, mm-hmm, yeah. And I think that maybe they'll eventually come around. And I know that Disney has become a little more prevalent in the comics with Kevin Feige coming into the comics as a kind of creative overhead or something like that. Like he actually had a lot to do with the Kamala's death in the comics, so
Hmm.
that they can bring in Kamala's actor from the MCU to write Kamala Khan.
Yes,
Um,
and most likely bring her powers in line with the MCU version as well.
mhm. But yeah, I guess that what I have to say about it. I hope they get a little braver with how they represent the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
Because of right now, it's kind of just like, well, we've got some like major characters, some B-listers, like Angela is, and we promoted her in a music video recently, and that was pretty dope, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where's her comic? Who knows? But well, on DC you have characters like Catwoman and Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, who DC has said themselves is the fourth pillar of the DC universe.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, like you don't really have that with Marvel. Like you don't have really
No,
any
you
of the
haven't had
Avengers
you
or
haven't had a cartoon come out about one of their LGBT characters and have the romance be a major part of it.
Mhm. Like the only thing I can think of was in Marvel Rising where they have America Chavez and they do bring up her two moms
Mm-hmm.
and it's a crucial part of her backstory. But it's a team story and I don't think they ever get to her queerness. But
Right.
it's very implied because of well she's a biker, you know. It's not too hard to connect the dots here,
Right. Yeah.
but I do have hope that maybe they'll come around because like Disney does have queer stories. Like recently they did like a basically a Disney Channel original movie, but it did air on Disney Plus. But the it was basically about a kid who was really into musicals and basically tries to get on Broadway and stuff. I don't think explicitly they say he's queer, but it's kind of a coming of age story, so maybe he hasn't figured it out yet. But it's very obvious, where it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't see you as, like, to his female friend, where it's just like, I don't see you at like that. I see you as a sister, I see you as a friend. So I'm
Right.
not really interested. It's a little frustrating, but hey, we've got like TC Archie's actually for I guess the last maybe 15 years. Pretty trying to stay modern with all that. Like Kevin Keller has been quite
Yeah.
a big character. But yeah, hope they do better.
Well, that can be said of every company
Hmm.
out there. Even if they're doing well, they can always be doing better. Before we go, would you like to plug anything that you're working on that people can check out?
You can find me at Twitter at JennytheGeek. I also have a YouTube channel that I'm going to try to upload more and talk more about comics because of it's my favorite medium. And maybe by the time this comes out, I make no guarantees, but I'm going to have a video about how to get into comics, which I
Awesome.
hope is very informative.
Yeah, that I can see where that'd be very helpful.
And I will start uploading more comic book related stuff.
Thanks again to Jenny the Geek for joining me to discuss LGBTQ representation in the Marvel Universe. Next episode, we'll get back to some lesser known X-Men as I continue to work on wrapping up this iteration of Welcome to Geektown. But I'm still taking questions for upcoming episodes. Yes, Scott, I got yours and I'll be covering it soon. Which you can email to welcome2geektown@gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com and click the submit a question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter @GeektownPodcast, Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown @mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them
Welcome to Geek Town. Population, us.
Welcome to Geek Town is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.